Okay, Mike, we are on the Speak Your Truth with Mark Ross podcast. I am your host, Mark Ross. And with me this evening, I have with me fellow veteran, Air Force veteran, Mike Smith. He has a story that he wants to share, and I'm here for it. So, welcome to the show, Brother Mike.
Yes, Mark. Thank you for having me on. I look forward to it.
Yes,
So
sir.
I'm ready when you are to dive
Yes, sir.
into it.
Yes, sir. Let's get right into this thing. Before uh, we talk about your memoir called The Gutter Gospel, uh, I want to ask, talk to me, Mike, about your childhood. I know we had a nice conversation about that, and I just want you to piggyback and talk about how life was for you growing up to
Okay.
let's
Well,
just set the foundation.
sure. So I'll start at the very beginning. I was born in Aberdeen, South Dakota. My dad was a manager for the J.C. Penney clothing store chain, and as a result of having that job, and I have four siblings in my family. He had his wife to take care of and five kids, and so he was pretty much stuck to having to do that gig as a manager, and he would get transferred a lot. Is kind of where I'm going. So when I was three, we moved out of Aberdeen and moved to Sauk Center, Minnesota, where I lived and was raised until I was 12 years old. So at that time, um, I had a pretty normal childhood growing up, I guess you would say. But then what happened was he lost his job. He was fired in Sauk Center when I was 12.
Hmm.
So now we're stuck in a really tight situation to where it was like, the best way to put it was that they used their life savings that they had and had this dream of starting their own clothing store because
Hmm.
that's what he had been doing. So the whole family was kind of tied into that, and I moved my between the sixth grade, Christmas vacation, and to a little town up in, it's called Barnesville, Minnesota. People have never heard of it, I'm sure. It's only 2,000 people, and that's about a half-hour drive outside of Fargo, North Dakota, and
Okay.
that's where I live now, is West Fargo. But anyway, that kind of gives you a quick synopsis of the background to get up to the age when I'm 12. He's running the clothing store, and at that time, this big mall opened in Fargo called West Acres, and everybody in Barnesville would just say, "Well, we'll buy like our necessities from the local clothing store, but if we want, to go shopping, we're just going to drive a half hour up the road and go to the mall and have a lot more selection." So the store was failing. And because my dad had all this stress on him, I'm sure this is probably what did him in. Was 3 years into this, now I'm 15, he passed away with a massive heart attack. And my mom was telling all the kids, okay, we're going to be losing the house, we're going to be losing the store and everything to the bank, right? So this is kind of fast forwarding. I'll share one thing with you from that time, Mark, and your audience, is that that was my first suicide attempt, and I want to get this out to your audience, is that uh, I am a two time suicide survivor. That was the first time, because right after he died, I was just like, okay, man, now what are we going to be doing?
Yeah.
Because there were just no options. So that's how I wound up in the Air Force after the suicide attempt that had failed. That's how I got to the military. And that kind of brings me to that point in my life. And, I had, back in high school, I had been kind of not only committing suicide attempt, but also uh, getting involved with one friend that I had, my only friend in high school, about doing smoking weed and drinking and partying and stuff and just not really caring. So I brought that bad attitude into the military with me, which, as you well know, is a bad mix, because just about 2.5 years into the Air Force, I'd met up with some guys that were smoking and stuff. So I was partying with them in the military, wound up getting kicked out of there and moved back to Fargo Moorhead. And I bumped in, you'll appreciate this, Mark. I bumped into a buddy of mine that was a Marine that I met when I first tried. I should back up one step and say that after high school, I did try college for a year, and that's when I met Donnie, the ex-Marine. So coming back now to Fargo Moorhead after being kicked out, bumped into Donnie one night, and we decided to rent a little house over in Moorhead, Minnesota, and grow marijuana. And when we were doing that, he was at work one day, and I write about this in my website, theguttergospel.com. I have 2 sample chapters up there, and as well as my entire story can be found at the bottom of my homepage. But let me say that in 88 now is when this is happening, that I had a manic break. I'm bipolar. So that was my first introduction to what it was like to have that bipolar kick in.
Now,
And
Mike,
yeah,
I'm sorry to
yeah,
stop you. Let me break you right quick. I want to talk about that right quick, okay? Because we talked about uh mental health and how it affected you, but just had a question. Do you think that your father's passing maybe had something to do with, the downswing and the mental illness and all that?
yes, sir. I really do, Mark. Looking back on it now,
Hmm.
because my dad, of course, was the rock of the family, and once he
Sure.
passed away, it was like, man, I was just, like I said, I was just so depressed. And I was just thinking, you know, well, I already shared this, but I tried to take my own life. And
Hmm.
I write about that in the book,
Hmm.
what that experience was really like. But getting back to the sample chapter, if you read that, and this ties in exactly to my dad and answers your question directly, is that I saw him in this episode telling me to go blow my effing head off with the shotgun that he had gave me when we were, you know, and so that's the manic break. That's the first sample chapter
Hmm.
called Catch My Fall or something like that, but it's up there. And then the second one was being in a padded cell, not 11 years later, right before Thanksgiving in 1999. So we're zooming ahead now 11 years. And yeah, that one was a horrible situation as well. And I just feel so bad these days for people
Hmm.
that do struggle with bipolar. Those numbers are getting higher every year that passes by, because the drugs are everywhere in this country and around the world, and that ties right into the mental illness issues. And I deal these days with a lot of veterans up at the hospital, at the VA in town, that suffer with it, and share my story with those guys. And I like your shirt you got on. I don't know if you can see mine, but it says former homeless veteran shares his true life story with the guttergospel.com. And then there's there's a saying up here that says 22 veterans per day, which is the amount of people, as you know, that take their own life. And I shared this, and my dear brother listened to one of my podcasts, and he said, Mike, you got to get the numbers right, man. Now it's 17.6. So it's not
Hey,
22 per day,
I,
but,
I heard the numbers went up.
yeah, I know it.
I
But
heard the numbers went up.
I Googled it to get my facts straight, and it is 17.6, or at least when I Googled it about a month ago, that's what it was.
Oh, so it went
So
down.
yeah, but the point being, Mark, is that pick the number. That's still way too many veterans,
Yeah.
man, taking their
Uh,
own life each
per
day,
day.
you
Per
know,
day. Yes.
per day. So that's
Yes.
what my shirts are all about. I get them out of Custom Ink out in Virginia. I got a whole closet full of them, and it's like it brings a lot of awareness to people that struggle with this stuff, especially veterans. So I love being up at the VA, going to my medical appointments. Just so happens I have 2 tomorrow I'm going to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I had one today as
all
well.
my Yeah, all my care is through the VA.
Mm,
And I want to give a shout out to you about what you do for veterans, as we talked about before we came on air.
thank you, brother. Thank you. I appreciate that. Speaking of the VA, when you got out of the military, did you ever go to the VA for help, or did you just
Yeah,
blow it? Well,
well, Mark, after 1999, that episode in the padded cell and the straitjacket, I finally got diagnosed with bipolar. So this answers your question directly and says that um, that was I was going to the VA just for my medicine basically and my mental health guy at the VA. So I
okay.
was tied in and to a psychiatrist there that was prescribing my medications to keep me balanced as much as possible.
Mhm.
But when you dive into the book and read kind of what happened after that, treatment centers and psych wards and all this other stuff, and it was like that in all of going through all of that, that was when my second suicide attempt came up that I write about back in 2004. So not only had I been a two-time suicide survivor, but also a homeless veteran years later, and
How'd you
you
become
know
homeless?
uh, the easiest way to explain it is this is forwarding way ahead in time to 2019. It was that year that I became homeless. And
Okay.
with bipolar, I was just, my meds weren't balanced right. And I always make this joke on air is to say, it's not an exact science that when they're working on your brain and trying to get your chemistry in your brain figured out. They're practicing medicine and they're practicing on your brain.
Mm, mm,
So I wasn't sleeping, and
mhm.
that's the trigger. If you're not sleeping, then that triggers it. So I had just had my one dear dog die that year. So I was seeking help down at the regional VA in St. Cloud, Minnesota,
Okay.
down there that year. Was in treatment with all these veterans from all over the country, and that's a 5-week program. So I was doing that,
Mhm.
and for some reason, they my meds still weren't getting balanced because I was not sleeping at all, and that was the danger zone. And so now the time is up, and my wife said, you can't come home because your meds still aren't balanced, and we don't want you back here until you get your meds balanced because it's just going to be a revolving door and you're going to be stuck just going in and out of these places again. So she wouldn't let me come back home, right? So I wound up on a psych unit right after the 5 weeks was up. The doctor there said, well, we need you for more observation before we can send you out. So they put me on a psych unit. And that was for an extended period of time, about a month and 1 week, roughly 5 weeks. So um, they said, your meds still aren't balanced. And believe it or not, I was interviewed by some social worker there that suggested that I be having a civil commitment placed on me in the state of Minnesota and sticks me in a homeless shelter out in
Civil-
Allendale, Minnesota.
Okay.
So that's how I wound up homeless and with the civil commitment on me. So I write about all this in the book. It's 2019, the year in review, that explains all of this. So now let's get what happened after that. I wanted out of Allendale in the worst way because it was the most miserable situation. I can just share this one
Yeah.
point with you is that
Sure.
for Easter, we had our big Easter feast was half a banana man and half a cup of milk because that's how underfunded they were. And it was just misery for me. So
Allendale,
shortly
I'm
after,
assuming it's a psych unit. It's a psych ward,
it's a homeless shelter.
a homeless shelter. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, for veterans. Yeah,
Okay. For veterans.
for veterans. Yeah.
Mm.
So that's where they stuck me. out there.
Mm-hmm.
So now at this point, of course, I'm really discouraged about life. And I'm just like, God, why me? I just kept asking the question. And I want to back up with you, if I could, to something that
Sure.
carried me through a lot of dark times that really stuck in my mind.
Okay.
Back in the 90s, I had this job driving a van around, dropping off medical supplies and stuff to satellite clinics. And there was this Christian radio show called the Memoir Clinic. Two Christian psychiatrists were talking back and forth with each other on the show. And one of them made this statement, and I'll never forget it. He said that, I have 7 kids, and all of them are either doctors, lawyers, professors, or high achievers in their chosen field. And then I got this one little guy, my second youngest, which is where I fall in my family, that is bipolar. And his statement, Mark, was this. He said, he said this to the other doctor he was talking to on air. He said, I'll bet you anything one day that little guy is going to outshine the rest of them by far. And that carried me through all these dark times that I'm discussing with you here, because it was like, if we fast forward to modern day, Mike, now I'm sharing my message all around the globe, as I shared with you right before we came on air. Now I'm doing these podcasts all over the continents, everyone now. And I'm doing it, man. I'm just, sharing my story all around the world, and from the comfort of my own bedroom. And had God told me, that you're going through all these trials because you're going to be blessing a lot of people one day just by being open and honest and sharing your story, and not charging any money for it, not doing anything, just saying, here's the truth, here's the gutter truth. That's why it's the gutter gospel. About, I don't hide from anybody about all the stuff I'd gone through. So that takes you through the first homeless shelter. And then, so I wound up hitching a ride up back to Fargo, and I write about it in the book. And my wife meets me at the house, and with 3 or 4 police cars, and says, you're not allowed here. You don't have any money. You don't have anything. So, where are you going to go, and what are you going to do now? Right. I'm still not on my meds balance correctly. So cycling really severely.
Okay.
And she allowed me to stay one night in the house, and she left and went and stayed with her parents in town. Okay. So long story short, what wound up happening there was I called 911 too many times because I didn't have any food in the house. And I thought maybe they could come and bring me some food, because that's where my mind was. It was that far gone. Right. And it was like, so
You were hungry,
huh?
You were hungry, huh?
I was hungry. Yeah. After
You
having
call
that Easter.
911 for some food, bro?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, it's, I'm
Your ass
glad
was
that I
hungry,
can
man.
laugh about it now, but yeah.
Good
Anyway,
gracious.
so they put me in jail, man, for calling the cops too many
Yeah,
times. They put me in the county lockup, right? So
right?
I'm in there for like 7 or 8 days, still cycling really severely. And now my doctor finds me in there in my own cell, totally naked, covered head to toe in my own feces, right? And that's so he said, after seeing me there,
Hmm.
they put a civil commitment on me now in North Dakota, and I still had one on me in Minnesota. So I've got 2 civil commitments on me. And now they stick me in the state institution for as long as it took to get my meds balanced
Mhm.
out in Jamestown, North Dakota. And here's what happened, Mark.
Mm,
This is how miserable it was, right?
mm.
They would take me from Fargo in chains in the
Mhm.
back of a paddy wagon, right?
Correct. You're right.
And drive me out to Jamestown, North Dakota, 100 miles straight west of Fargo, to the state institution. And they
Mhm.
would bring me back to stand trial every week in Fargo in front of different judges,
Mm.
to see if I could get my freedoms back. And I was denied 5 different times. and I'm in the state institution crying out to God saying, hey, why me, God? Why did I have to go through all of this crap in my life? I'm in tears, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can share this with you. This doctor, well, let me finish what I was going to say. I'm in tears and I look up and there's this plaque on the wall. I'll never forget it out there. It says, you've been given this life because you're strong enough to live it. And it was like, okay, God, if that's your answer, you must have a purpose for me still because I survived all this stuff. But yeah, it was no picnic, by far. It was just like going through all those trials. And when I do these podcasts, it's like I share my story and people start breaking down. I start breaking down sometimes because it's like reliving it, is not pleasant, but it's therapy for me too, to just, do them all the time and get my message out there because people can relate to it on one level or another and say, man, I tell you what, if Mike can live through all this stuff, maybe there's hope for me too. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yes, sir.
Because it's like it's the gutter truth, like I said earlier, and it's all in the book that people can read for free. There's sample chapters, as I mentioned, on the site too, if you want to check out those before you proceed to the whole book. But um, yeah, it was quite the ride, that's for sure, Mark.
So, how many kids do you have?
I just have one son,
Son,
Jordan, who's going to be 30 in August. Yeah.
30. Okay. And how are things between you and Jordan?
They're a lot better these days now that I've been doing these podcasts, to be honest with you. He was really happy that, I found my outlet. And I can share this with your audience too that I think you'll enjoy. I had a meeting with my psychiatrist here about a week ago, maybe a week and a half ago. And he said, I shared what I was up to doing these podcasts, Mark. And he said, um, sounds like, Mike, you finally found your home. That's what he said to me. That was his comment. He was really proud of me for doing what I'm doing now.
Mhm.
And my life's come full circle because after the state institution, when they finally released me from there, they put me in my second homeless shelter in Fargo, and this is how my whole life flipped and came full circle to get out of all that stuff. Was that homeless shelter? It was called Project Heart, and it's not in existence anymore. But that's why they put me upstairs is where the vets would be, and then downstairs they'd have all the criminals, and we would eat all of our meals together, right? And it was like, so I'm doing that, stuck in there. Wife still doesn't want me back, and it's like, okay, so I'm just sitting there, laying down on my bunk one day, and this lady comes in that worked at the front desk there and says, Mike, you got some mail here, so go and grab that. And long story short, I open it up and it's all this back pay with the 100% service connection from the military. So I literally went like from going through all those experiences and crying about it and just saying, God, now I can go out and bless the world with my message. And that's what I'm doing. So they just came full circle.
Yeah. And it's interesting too that throughout all of this stuff and chaos that you went through, your wife was still there. How long were you with your wife?
Right.
How long were you with her?
We're still married, believe it. Now, this next month, it'll be 36 years. But she's a rock because I don't, it was hard on the marriage to say the least. It was a big strain on the marriage, but right now, she's, as we speak, she's up in the hospital with her mom that's 93, who's also been my prayer warrior all those years, and she's not doing well. She's in ICU. So my wife's up there. So I apologize if I might have to cut this a little short tonight, but because she's waiting after the podcast ends here to come home because we have dogs and we don't want to set the dogs off on the podcast.
Oh, you
You
don't want
know,
to.
no, they're
Yeah.
behaving right now.
Oh, and because I was just in the back of my mind, I'm sitting back and I'm thinking like, wow, you went through all this, and your wife is still there, and you know, and your son, he's still present, you know, and I've heard stories where people in your situation aren't so lucky.
Right,
They're not
right.
lucky. And I mean,
Yeah,
you went through in your life 2 suicide attempts, several stays at institutions, and years of trying to find the chemical balance to make you well.
right. Yes,
There's a higher purpose for you, Mike. It has to
yes,
be a
sir.
higher purpose for you. You know what I'm saying? Because like I said, many people that have been through some of the things that you've been through, just some, the outcome wasn't so good for them.
Right. Yeah, I
You know?
know.
So when you look back at your life and say, wow, she's still here.
Right. Yeah.
What comes to your mind when you hear me say that?
I
I
get
mean,
emotional. I get emotional because it's like, all those down times, and I can share this story with you. It'll choke me up. But, when we were going through all those times, this right after 99 in the padded cell, I couldn't find a job doing anything except driving a taxi around at night, which didn't pay much, and all the drunks would make fun of me. And that led me to my second suicide attempt.
mm,
Um, Went
mm,
down in the basement of the house and started stringing myself up. And this ties right directly into your question. And was just about to end it.
mm,
And this little voice said, "Mike, your life still has a purpose." And I think that came straight from God, man, because
mm,
it was like, uh, and she, we had such little money. She literally had to trade in all of our aluminum cans for a gallon of milk one time. That's how tough it was. So you can only imagine, right? And you're right, my life does have a higher purpose because, and again, that's why I do the custom shirts. That's why I do the podcasting. That's why I wrote the book and all this stuff to get it out there and say what I shared with you earlier, Mark, which is my life does have a higher purpose, and I believe everybody's life has a higher purpose. You know what I mean? Because people listen to my testimony when I lead these small groups with the jail chaplains in town and all these other organizations, and I share with everybody my life story is different than just about everybody's you would ever meet, but your life story is as well. So I always encourage people by saying that, only you can share your story, and you can't do it if you do take your own life.
mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
My best friend, the guy I was talking to you about in high school, he took his own life just like 3 years ago. Found that out on Facebook, and he was my only friend in high school.
Mm,
And that now I just can't. He never saw it take off, because I didn't start doing the podcast thing until after the first of the year. So,
mm.
but yeah, wild ride.
Yeah. So I'll ask you this: are you sober and clean?
Yeah, I've been sober now for a little over 3 years, but it was not easy. You
Mm,
know what I mean? And the motivation to do that is to spread my message. And you can't do it if you're using. You know what I mean?
mm,
So,
mm.
yeah.
Understand?
And like I also shared with you, I know this is jumping ahead a little bit, is to say that I'm excited about going to that storytellers conference to see about the book getting turned into a movie. So got to get that out there. That's October 1st through the 4th out in Orlando. So yeah.
Well, let me bounce back a little bit as well. Um, you did 2.5 years in the Air Force, and you got out, you didn't get out honorably,
Right. It was called medical under honorable under medical, something like that. Honorable under medical. Yeah.
Medical discharge under honorable circumstances. I think that's what you said.
Yeah, something like
All right.
that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And that, to be honest with you, Mark, that really kind of gets to me because I remember being down there in those treatment centers, standing in a line for my medications with other veterans, and they would, I would tell them, hey, I don't feel like I'm worthy as a veteran to, be here with you guys because you guys served honorably. You didn't get kicked out, just like you didn't get kicked out. And so they would always tell me, Mike, don't feel that way about yourself. You served for some years and you paid your dues. So, you just took a different path in life. But if you were in the military full time, you're a veteran. So
That's right.
that's how that goes.
That's right.
But yeah.
That's right. I had a similar situation where I had to tell someone on my show recently of the same thing. Uh, it doesn't matter if you did 3 months or 3 years, you are a veteran. If you put the uniform on and you did what you could to represent, then you earn it. You got it. Don't
Yeah.
second guess yourself. You know,
Right.
don't
Yeah.
don't carry that unnecessary burden of shame or feeling not good enough.
Yeah.
You were battling demons since 13.
Right. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was. Yeah, I was.
Give yourself some grace, Mike.
Okay, buddy. I'll
Give
do
yourself
that.
a little grace. You
I'll do
deserve it.
that.
You deserve it, man. And I'm not saying it just to be nice. I'm saying it because it's real. We don't give
That's right.
ourselves enough grace, man. We don't give ourselves that pat on the back when nobody
Yeah.
else, you know. So
Right.
I'm saying to you and everybody that's listening, pat yourself on the back every now and again. Give yourself some,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Because
here's what I haven't shared with you yet, Mark, is that this coming Thursday now, tomorrow, every Thursday night, I lead this small men's group over in Moorhead out of the Life Recovery Bible, and that's a big part of my sobriety and recovery. That book is God's view on how He looks at people in love that have those demons, like you were talking about, because it has like the footnotes after the Gospels and the different things that you read in there, and it's a great group of guys. There's only like 5-6 of us in there, but every Thursday night, man, I look forward to that because it's just what part of what fuels me. And I mentioned the jail chaplains too. Eric Johnson in Tolman's runs the small groups that I'm involved with, and Mike Little is the director. So those guys are prayer warriors for me, man. And now that my mother-in-law is struggling to survive, those guys are right with me praying for her and my family all the time. So it's a big blessing.
so when did you come out with this book, The Gutter Gospel? When did you come up with this?
It was published. I'm trying to remember if it came out before the first of the year. I think it was just after the first of the year because that's when I started doing the podcasting thing and got it up on my website, completed again at the bottom of my homepage. So, but I think if people take the time to read it, they will get something out of it that is unique. You know what I mean? Because it's just me recording my true life story that I just got done sharing with you here in the last, not quite an hour now. But you know what I'm saying? It's just telling the truth and saying there's hope for you. Like we were just talking about a minute ago. And I believe in everybody, man, until there is no more hope and they're gone. So I just lost a very dear friend in December to cancer, I remember talking to him. His name was Brad Witzke. I always make a point to bring up Brad and what he meant to me in my life, because I met him at a jail chaplain's ministry a few years ago when I was first getting sober. And so I'm standing in line just waiting to get some popcorn. He comes up to me just out of the blue, never met the guy before. And he opens up his shirt to me and he goes, "Look at this. My name is Brad, and this is what the cancer operation I went through looks like." So it was in remission for a little while. So that's when I got to know Brad over the last few years. And we'd go out to eat and stuff, but then the cancer came back, long story short. So I was taking him to all of his radiation appointments. And, I could tell the cancer was just killing him slowly. He was just dying before my eyes. Exactly right. And he asked me one time when we were going out to eat, and he said, "Mike, do you think I'm going to die soon?" And here's what my answer was. And he died December 14th this past year, right? I said, "You know what, Brad? Look at it this way. Even if you were to pass away from cancer or something else, here soon, think of all the stuff and the manure that this planet is going to be dealing with, that you're going to be leaving behind you, and you're going to be in glory, man, just having the best time. And I'm going to hopefully meet you up there one day, and we can play some volleyball together with all the beautiful women up there." And that put a big smile on his face. I said, "So that's how I would look at that, Brad. That's how I would look at that, my friend." But no, Brad was a great guy, man. He was a carpenter, and he'd give you the shirt off his back, and he's sorely missed. And I was telling him that last time we went out to eat, "Brad, I'm thinking of something, but I don't know quite what it is yet." And I was thinking of the podcasting thing. I just didn't have it all figured out yet. And I was just about to wrap up my book and everything else. So right after he passed away in the middle of December, then I was just like kind of down, pretty down, and depressed for a while. But after that 2 week funk, I came out of it to say, "You know what, God, just use me any way you can with this project." And now it's up and going and doing well. So that's what keeps me sober and keeps me fueled, and all, including those other things I was sharing with you about the jail chaplains and the Thursday group in church on Sunday. And I have a Saturday men's group I go to as well with a bunch of guys. So every day of the week, I'm doing something, either a podcast or two, or a group, or all three of those combined some on certain days. And it's just, I don't have time to be doing anything else other than just doing those things, which is what God would want out of me now, is to use me just like he's using you to help other veterans. I thank the world of you for doing that, man, because that's a high calling in life, to be able to give your time like that to other veterans. I really admire you for that. So God bless you, man.
Thank you, brother, man. I appreciate that. What podcast do you have going on right now?
Oh, I do only do guest
Okay, so
appearances right now. I don't have my own setup yet, but the last two or three I did, everybody was saying, "You should have your own podcast, man, because you've been through some stuff, and you should just host your own." So I am looking into that. I just joined Spotify here a couple weeks ago, so looking at that. I should send you this link. I think I will, Mark, after we get done here tonight, about this one I did at the beginning of December. I think you'd really get a kick out of that when you listen to it. It was the guy's a veteran. He was in the Navy for 22 years, so he lives out in Virginia, and he did a really great job, just like you are, just kind of letting me talk and saying, "Man, I tell you what, Mike, you've got quite the testimony." And everybody was always telling me that through the dark times, if I ever came out of it all, that I would have an amazing testimony. So that fuels me, it really does.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's good for you to share your story to others, because you're letting them know that whatever struggles you're facing, you can overcome it, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You gotta
Yeah.
have faith though, but you can overcome it,
Yeah.
you know.
Yes.
Because like I told you, brother, there are people that did not make it, and
Right.
they didn't go through as much as you did. I mean, I'm not trying to compare apples and oranges, but I'm just keeping it real honest.
Yeah.
You you went through a lot at it, and I would say you're still going through.
Yeah.
You
Because I
you
have to, yeah, I have to do these things like I mentioned in order to just stay on the straight and narrow and
yeah,
bless other people,
yeah,
you know, and I
yeah.
and I write messages to myself sometimes on my own email account and just say encouraging words out of the Life Recovery Bible to myself, even if nobody else will say it, but most people do on these podcasts. You know,
Mhm.
I did one the other day, Mark. I'll share this with you guys. This was out of the Trinidad down in the Caribbean, and they had a live audience, and they were typing their questions to me, and I was like, okay, man, I guess I got to think on my toes because I wasn't expecting this, but I enjoyed that one, man. It was I'll have to send you the link to that because I did just get that finished here. So I have a few of them I could send your way to listen to in your spare time, but I know you're busy with doing your own thing as well, which, like I said, I really admire. So, yeah.
You again, man. So what's next for you in your journey, Mike?
Well, I shared that that conference coming up here in
Right,
October for
right.
Orlando, so I'm saving for that. And besides that, you know, just doing my daily routine now, and got to just take it one day at a time, man. And just, you know, like the saying goes, you just got to, you can't get too out in front of your skis. You know, you just got to kind of take it that way slowly so that you can stay focused and get your stuff organized and be helping people.
Hmm.
You know, that's where it's at.
If you can look back at your younger self, Mike, knowing what you know now, what would you tell young Michael?
Well, that's a good question, and I'll share this with you. There's this story by Mercy Me called "Dear Younger Me." I don't know if you've ever heard about it, but that's the message of their song. And I answer the question this way: I don't think I would change a thing, Mark. To be
Hmm.
honest with you, I mean, had I just and here's another story I relate to people when I'm asked that question is to say this. I remember right after Prince died, and since I'm from Minnesota, I was a big Prince fan, right?
Okay.
Prince the musician, and he they had this story from all the people that were near to Prince talking about him after he had passed away, and they said there was this two comments that stuck out to me from that show. One of them was the guy, his close friend, I forget the guy's name, but he said, you know, had Prince just had a normal life and had two or three kids and worked in a factory and this, that, and the other thing, I think he would have died a lot happier man. And then, so that answers your question in part. And then the other one was his photographer. And his photographer made the comment that she had taken a picture of Prince out in front of this big grand cathedral over in Spain or someplace overseas in his decked out, you know, suits and stuff. And it was like, she said her comment was that Prince to me, when I took that picture and I looked at it, seemed like the loneliest man on the planet. And, you know, when I was going through my entire life, that's how I felt most of my life was I was the loneliest man on the planet. And for so many years, I was just so down. So it's like, I'm not going back to that. You know what I mean? I'm moving forward in life so I can bless people. And, because otherwise, there's so many stories I can share with you, and I can talk to you for hours about all these different people I bumped into throughout my life. So I wouldn't change a thing, because I met so many amazing people that were trying to help me. I just refused it for all those years. And that's the truth. That's just being honest.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. How can people reach you?
They can reach me directly. I'm going to share my email with you. For some reason, I don't know why, but I have this lady uh, set up all of my social media profiles, and all of them went down. I don't know why. I wasn't even posting anything on there. She was for me about my book. And for some reason, Facebook kicked me out, Instagram kicked me out. So I'm going to share this with you. I'll
Okay.
just put out my personal business email, with just simply Mike at theguttergospel.com.
At the Gutter Gospel.
Yes, theguttergospel.com. Mike at theguttergospel.com.
Okay.
That's my Outlook account for my website. That's how they can reach me direct.
Okay.
And I do my best to answer those emails as quickly as I can, so that I can talk people out of suicide. I don't know if you got a chance to check my website out, but there's the Veterans Suicide Prevention Line. There's the prayer line. There's a few others. That's the tab right next to my homepage. It says help for everyone. So if you're struggling, go there first. And if nobody can help you, you feel like you don't have anybody you can talk to that knows what you're going through, please email me, and I'll do my best to get you going in the right direction. So do that.
Mike Smith. This has been a great interview. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me, and I wish nothing but the best for you, brother. You
Thank you,
know,
Mark.
uh, we need more people like you to share their stories, because I really do, in my heart, believe that many people are out there feeling like Prince. They
Yeah.
feel like the loneliest person in the world, man. There are a lot of lonely people that smile in your face every day, and
Yes.
it's time to stop playing. You know,
It's time to blow the lid off of that isolation.
yes,
You
man.
know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
the key.
yeah.
That's the key.
We need people to talk. Say, hey, I'm not, I'm not, I'm not that guy. I'm not
Yeah.
that guy. So let's
Right.
talk about it. Yeah.
There's this there's this chapter in the book, and I'll share this with you guys before I jump off here tonight. It's called Sea of Tears, the parable of the muddy pennies. And the muddy penny is exactly that. If you read that chapter, it's 5 pages long. You'll really get a kick out of it. It's how God appeared to me in a dream one night, and I wrote it down. And it's the truth of everything I experienced in that dream. And what the muddy penny represents is what you just said. That's how people view their own self-worth in this world today, is as a filthy, lonely, muddy penny, and they just need somebody to bless them and get their tears washed away in the sea of tears, and reach out to them.
Clean.
That's the parable of the muddy pennies.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. Mike, I appreciate it. I really do. And I hope that we get a chance to talk again. Um,
Yeah, I'd love to come on that other podcast you're starting off. I'd
yes.
love to go on there. You'll have
Okay.
to remember to include me on there. I'd like to go on that show.
Okay. Got you. Got you. We will make that happen.
I
Uh,
appreciate it.
all right. With that being said, guys, my name is Mark Ross, and this has been the Speak Your Truth with Mark Ross podcast. Remember, guys, it's okay to not be okay. Just do something about it. With that being said, I'm out. Mike, you have a good evening. Ladies and gentlemen, you also have a good evening. Bye bye.
God bless you, Mark.
Yes, sir.